Welcome, everyone. As part of the 20th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Health Fair, presented by the City of Bellevue and Bellevue Alumni, chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, we present the 2024 MLK Youth Panel. We have representatives from various organizations in Bellevue and the Greater East Side who will be sharing their views, perspectives, and experiences regarding important topics affecting them today. This is our second year hosting this important youth panel in partnership with the City of Bellevue Diversity Advantage Team, Bellevue Youth Link, Eastside Youth Coalition, and Africans on the East Side. We're excited to have such an amazing group of young leaders joining us today. Can we each youth leader introduce himself by sharing your name, pronouns, school, grade, and organization you're representing?
Hello there. I am Vita Grace Israel Cabanelia. My pronouns are she, they, and I am a sophomore at Interlake High School. I am a part of Bellevue's Youth Link Board and Student Council.
Hello, my name is Rihanna Hogan, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm a junior at Sammamish High School, and I'm here representing Eastside Youth Coalition and Sammamish BSU.
My name is Awa. I go by she, her. I'm a freshman in Sammamish High School, and I'm representing Africans on the East Side.
Hi, my name is Medina Cora. I go to Chinook Middle School. I'm in 6th grade, and the organization I'm representing is Africans on the East Side.
Hello everybody, my name is Adam. I go by he, him pronouns. I'm a senior at Interlake High School and I'm representing Interlake BSU, Eastside Youth Coalition, and Youth Link Board.
Hello, my name is Aaliyah. I am a sophomore at Interlake High School. My pronouns are she, her, and I am representing Eastside Youth Coalition and Interlake BSU.
First off, before we start this conversation, I wanted to start by introducing our land acknowledgement, which is a way to respect and recognize the indigenous communities that have inhabited and cared for this land for thousands of years and continue to live here. On behalf of the City of Bellevue, we acknowledge that the land we are on as the ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish people, the traditional home of all tribes and bands, including the Duwamish, Squamish tribe, Muckleshoot Indian tribe, and Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We take this opportunity to honor and express our deepest respect to the original caretakers of this land, a people that are still here and continuing to honor their heritage.
Hello everyone. It is my honor to be able to speak to you about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King started his civil rights journey at the young age of 15 years old. He was accepted into Morehouse College the same year he graduated from Booker T. Washington High School. And at the age of 19, he graduated with a BA in sociology, and at 26, he received his PhD from Boston University. Dr. King was not only an activist, but he was a Black scholar. He used his student voice to lift up his lived experiences in high school, college, and graduate school. Dr. King applied what he learned academically and in life to become our country's most renowned civil rights leader.
This year's MLK Health Fair touches upon the significance of social determinants of health, on how our personal experiences can impact your health and well-being. To get started with the panel tonight, what do you see, experience, or believe that has a major role in your overall health and well-being, both at school and or community? Please share an example or two of what you and others experience.
All right, I'll start off. So, when I moved to Bellevue specifically, I noticed that a lot of non-Black people would be using racial slurs, like directed towards Black people, and it happens a lot in my school. and teachers will hear it. And I've told teachers before, like, hey, this is what's happening in class, and they'll tell me, like, they'll do something about it, so they'll tell the student, stop doing that. But it doesn't really do anything because that student themselves doesn't really care about how their language is affecting anyone else. And it makes school a really uncomfortable place for me to be, and I don't really want to be there. Like, I've left class before just because, there's been no change happening. So
I think a big issue with how I think racism can also come off is, like, students try to cover it up as jokes. Like, they will be like, oh, no, I'm just kidding, and try to make you feel like you're overly sensitive about racism, which is truly just, like, on so many levels unacceptable. And I feel like also teachers should be inviting a space that's anti-racist and should be establishing stuff to make sure that students shouldn't be allowed to say stuff like that. And I don't know, just because they have, like, a platform that could be used to just be anti-racist and create a safe space for different needs a student may have. So it's...
I think I'd like to add on to that, especially I just moved to Interlake High School, and the culture is significantly different with the way they handle racism and how it's put off as jokes. My chemistry class is actually a really good example of this. It's constant back and forth of racist jokes. And half of my class is POC. And a lot of the time they're targeting Asian and Black kids in my class. And it's interesting to see how people can just say jokes and don't realize how hurtful it is for me and my friends to be called all these slurs and just not receive any help from our teachers. Our teachers are meant to help and take care of us and give us a safe place to learn. But at this point, I don't see much of that. I want to feel comfortable in my classes, but I don't. And I think we need to find a better way of handling that and how we handle racism at school.
Yeah, I think to add on to all of that, all these like racial slurs and these racist jokes are just very normalized in both our schools and our community, and it doesn't really give you that opportunity to have like a safe environment to learn or to like feel like you really want to come to school for like any like reason. I also think that our teachers, like most of the students' favorite teachers are teachers that are just really doing the bare minimum of keeping their students safe in any area, if it's like dealing with any homophobic issues or just dealing with any racist issues. The teachers who are making our students feel safe, like all teachers should be doing, are the favorites, and it's really sad to see that they're really just doing like the bare minimum that our community should be doing.
Kind of adding on to that, I think that teacher support is like a big thing in this because students won't feel heard, and like the teachers, they wouldn't be taking it that seriously, and like that would cause students to not want to continue on their education.
I feel like it does play like a really big toll on your mental health, like when you're constantly defending yourself or constantly feel like you have to play along with the joke in order to not like get called out as like, oh, you're being sensitive. It had come to even a point like where I almost thought like, would it be easier if I was just like laughed with it too, just so I didn't have to call it out the many times I'd heard it. So I think it really does play a huge toll on your mental health. And I feel like that can also go into like counseling too. Having a diverse set of counselors to meet the needs of the students, I felt like I could talk to my counselor about certain stuff, but it comes to even like on a racial level, there's a point where there's a slight gap in understanding. And so I think establishing counselors, like BIPOC counselors, is also really, really important.
I agree with that, since from all the past issues I know me or like people at my school have had dealing with racial problems, the most that we've happened with our counselors is we've had something called a community talk where we would sit in like a circle or a room with the people it's happening to and the people who did it, and you would just talk it out, and then the school or the counselor will just like act like that's the end of the issue when it's really not. You really are barely even like hitting the surface issue at that point. Like that itself is an issue about how it's normalized and how there's not really any need to like really deal with the issue, like no urgency.
Sort of adding on to what she said, there's definitely like no accountability at all whatsoever. There's not really ever any talks about it, any kind of resolutions at all when it comes to like any sort of racial incident that may happen at school. Usually it's just kind of put under the rug and buried. I feel like our schools care more about their, how do I say this, like how everyone else views them rather than their student body. Like there's so much hurt there and they're not really focused on healing, just kind of covering it up with a quick Band-Aid, even though there's like a big gash in someone's neck. Like it's not sustainable at all. And I feel like, we're definitely not being taken care of.
I agree with that. I feel like a lot of the time they say the same thing of, we have HIB forms. You can talk to a teacher, you can talk to a counselor, and we cannot talk about it. I'm going to send out an email, a very vague email to the parents and students about this incident. But do they resolve how our feelings are hurt? Do they resolve what happens inside our classrooms and the constant racism that is going on? How are my friends being treated? How am I being treated? It's not acknowledged. And I think we need to start focusing on what are some better solutions? What's most sustainable? How are we going to keep in touch with our students and their communities and understand what it is to be a person of color in a school filled with racism?
Thank you, everyone, for your honest and courageous sharing. As you have shared, recognize that there's a lack of respect, support, and understanding affects your and others' outlook on school and community trust. I'm now going to move us to the second question. What are the challenges for seeking important support regarding your concerns at your schools and community?
I could start off really quick. I feel like Vida touched on this, like with the HIB forms. I feel like there's no really like specialized pathways to report incidents of hate and bias and like what's going on. So finding pathways for students to promote equitable treatment is very hard to come by and usually won't come from the school directly. And so I feel like that's one of the big issues. It's a very broad brush to cover a specific huge issue that's happening right now. And I think there needs to be more surrounding that.
I also think one of the challenges is the lack of urgency that the community and our staff really has to deal with our problems. HIB forms are given as like they're sort of like safety net. Whenever they hear any issue, they'll be like, oh, well, we have HIB forms, and I've filled them out before. I've known people who filled them out before, and you really do get like such a Band-Aid over the problem. I mean, HIB forms, depending on how severe they can get, sometimes they can go on like your record, and colleges will see them when you graduate. And I've had a counselor with a problem with one of my friends that they just told my friend that like, oh, well, if you file an HIB reform on this problem, it'll go on their transcript. They're caring more about how like the other student will be seen for colleges than really dealing with the problem itself. So
I think it's also, I guess, like that conversational bit that's missing. A lot of like community dialogue and especially like education on like specific issues, even with like the general student population. I think learning, important classes, race in the U.S. and sort of making, ethnic studies like a really important thing, and I feel like that goes together with like the lack of urgency thing, like genuinely making it at the forefront of what's going on because it's affecting so many students.
On top of that lack of urgency, there's also a lack of like information and sort of like empathy to really deal with these like problems.
I agree with you both, and I just wanted to add that when these issues are brought up to like admin and staff, they might tell you like, oh, like that's terrible and we're gonna, do our best to try to fix this, but it's just talk. Like there's never any action put behind that. And even if there sort of is, it's kind of like they're expecting you to do it for them. It's like, oh, like how do you think that we should move forward? Like they're kind of asking for us to do it. And I feel like student engagement is important, but it's like you're supposed to be protecting me, not the other way around. Like that's what I'm here for. I'm supposed to feel safe in my school and like I can actually be here, but now I'm feeling unsafe and like I have to defend myself. And adding on to that, I feel like when I do defend myself, that I'm building into a stereotype that's put onto me, like the angry black woman. I feel like I can't express my anger or my frustration with any of these situations because I don't want to put that label on myself, because that's exactly what's going to happen. You end up being the angry black girl if you want to talk about anything.
I feel like stereotypes play a really large part in how people respond to our reactions to racism. I think a lot of the times it's the trope of the angry black woman or the obedient Asian person. I don't think me speaking out is me being rash or outrageous. It's me telling people how I actually feel. If I see my friends being hurt, if I'm being hurt, what am I going to do? I should be able to feel comfortable without being called sensitive or ridiculous, or my friends being called ridiculous and outrageous. What's the point? How am I going to feel safe if I can't say anything? And don't just tell me, did you file a HIB? Is that going to help me? And even when I do talk to a teacher, there's nothing much they can do. So how would you feel? Like, what do you want to see instead?
Thank you. So, thank you for sharing those challenges that you have experienced and others may be experiencing. Now let's think about those solutions that you were starting to bring up. What changes do you wish would happen that will build a sense of belonging in the community or in your school?
I think one of the things that we launched for Interlake BSU was kind of, I guess, like representative of the struggle and sort of what changes that we would want to see. We partnered with Eastside for All to begin to launch anonymous hate and bias reporting forms specifically for issues of discrimination and sort of connect them to resources regarding that. And I feel like it was something that was very long overdue. It was something where it was like a lot of students are experiencing this, but there's no really specialized path to heal or to even process what happened to you, like in the realm of like racial trauma. And so I think that's one of the changes I would like to see, and that's what like Interlake BSU has kind of been developing and hoping to get it to more areas in the district. And so with that, I think it's just like specialized pathways, more honoring, like going back to like honoring the diverse population that we have at Bellevue through like actually uplifting and protecting those marginalized groups.
I think I would like to see more urgency and more like empathy for these problems that are being brought up to our teachers and our staff. I've had teachers in the past still being like daily reminded about these problems that are happening, and we still haven't gotten so much of they haven't even asked us if we filled an HIB report. They really just like shake their head, say we'll get to it, and they haven't. So I think really like urgency and empathy. I think they really need to see what their students are going through to hopefully like realize that this is a problem that they can help solve.
And adding on to what she's saying about urgency, I think when it comes to teacher training, we definitely need that to be like a requirement, maybe like even before the school year starts, because when it comes to those trainings for like teachers learning how to deal with situations that we're talking about, like all of these racial inequalities and all of these issues that we're having, they have like a very long period, like almost like a 3-year period where they don't really have to do it. Like it's not urgently pushed at them. So I feel like that's definitely something that needs to be fixed. Like they definitely need to be doing that immediately before the school year starts, because how are they gonna be prepared to help us if they haven't been prepared?
I think we need a more urgent reaction to that. And I think a lot of the time RPD is not up to date. So much has happened in the past, 4 years. Hate crimes have increased by 11% within the Asian American community. George Floyd's death happened during COVID. The COVID-19 pandemic happened. And there are so many other situations that have occurred within that 3 or 4 year time period. How are teachers going to know how to handle our students and communities without knowing what's going on out in the outside in a deeper level and seeing what our students are going through and have a better understanding of these communities?
And even though most of what I'm saying and probably a lot of people here are saying are talking about our current high school or middle school lives, I do really think it starts all the way down in elementary. And I think that is another thing that they need to bring of like down in elementary school where you can talk to people of color, so you know that it's like, because when like in elementary school when you start hearing these racial jokes, or because that's what some kids are just brought up upon, I think you need to know that that's not all you are. Like you aren't just a racial joke. You are a person.
Completely. I feel like elementary was one of the first times I became like conscious of race just because of like what went on. And I did want to highlight really quickly that although like we all said really important issues, I feel like it's also not the student's responsibility. It's great that we're on taking this, but it shouldn't fall on us to process the injustice that happened to us and find solutions at the same time. And I'm glad we are, but I think it's also important to highlight that like it falls on the responsibility of communities and like districts who are dedicated to fostering a place of equity and inclusion. And I just wanted to say that really quick.
While we're on the topic of talking about our teachers and the districts, I also think the districts change their phone policies and their tardy policies probably like every year, but I don't really think that they've even talked about their dealing with their racial problems and these type of stuffs, because I'm dealing with the same things that my brothers and my cousins have dealt with, and they've graduated like 5-6 years ago. So
something that teachers should also do is actually like talk about the problem with somebody. I mean, with like you and the person you're having a problem with, instead of making you sign a form to be quiet and not talk about it, because a form won't make us be quiet because, yeah.
There have been incidents in the past where they have made me sign specific forms not to talk about certain situations that were fights with my friends or other students, comments that certain teachers have made in the past, and in some cases like inappropriate touching from adults, and just several more like racist and microaggressions. What are you gonna do? You're gonna make me sign a piece of paper to shut up, and you're gonna make other people shut up when we should be able to be given that opportunity to speak up. And the school district has this idea that, yes, you can have that freedom of speech. You do have that First Amendment right. But again, you're going to stop us from speaking our minds and also having the right to protest, and especially at school. Like, it's happened several times, and at my school very recently, there was a protest, and a couple of my friends were reprimanded for that protest, even though it was peaceful. And we saw several administrators from the school district show up, and it was somewhat threatening to a lot of us, and we did not think any of that would happen.
So although we were on the topic of like, it is definitely our staff and admin's job to be helping us out and guiding us through things, I do think that one thing that I wish was happening and that actually is currently happening is just healing within the student body. And that is something that hasn't come from the staff themselves, but from the students. Like with our BSU at Sammamish, actually the advisor there and our president, we've been working on like just rebuilding our community, because there's so much separation, not just like within the Black community, but with people in color and people of color in general. And I feel like once we start trying to kind of bring ourselves together and come back together as a community, then maybe it'll be a little bit easier for us to deal with the issues that we're facing from the school. Yeah.
Thank you all so very much. It's very powerful to hear y'all, and I really appreciate y'all speaking on behalf of lived experiences that, you know, somebody mentioned that somebody may have experiences beforehand, and it's still happening, and definitely having to heal that one hits. So thank you all very much for being here. I'm going to pass it to Aaliyah, who will be giving our closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you all for listening to our student voices and perspectives. Everything that Dr. King represented is equally, if not more, relevant today in 2023. As we watch the reversal of human rights and the significant rise of hate crimes, we will lead the way just as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did decades ago. Our collective cries for social justice, community solidarity, and our ongoing fight for racial equality will be heard. We will change the world as beautiful reflections of Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy. We are the dreams of our ancestors.
Thank you. All right, y'all.